precursor to this episode. First of all, I want to say it's good to be back with Metafix. Oh my goodness, I've missed you guys on this. And I've got a fair bit to talk about now. Bringing topics in. I want to hear what you guys want to hear about. But that said, today we're going to discuss the dangers of something called netdecking. And because this is a precursor, pre-title sequence, I want to define. Netdecking is a term that comes from Magic the Gathering and when I use play versus system when regards to cards using the word deck. Netdecking being, let's look on the internet, see what's doing well, and playing well. Today we're going to talk about the dangers of it. Alright, so, netdecking is a very dangerous habit to get into. I know some guys that do it, and let's be honest, some guys, they don't have the time to look at everything that they get, and it's hard to strategize, and sometimes you just want the winning strategy that the last guy used. One of the beauties of Heroclix I've found, though, is that netdecking doesn't always work for everybody. There's a lot of people in there, and there's a lot of reading with regards to all this stuff that just going in there and going, hey, this team won, without going, why did it win, is going to cause a lot of dangerous situations for yourself. You're going to be stuck with teams that you don't understand how to use. The prime example of this actually occurred very recently. I'm going to plug something pseudo-local, pretty close to us. Me and Amber are preparing to go to one of the ROC tournaments. They're actually holding one within a reasonable distance. By reasonable, I mean 4-hour drive, but that's neither here nor there. Still in our province. Thank you to the ROC and Dan Upham down in Windsor, where they're having a super qualifier. Amber's planning on volunteering to judge. I, on the other hand, want to get in on the game. That said, I have needed to practice. I come up with ideas, and Amber pilots the teams that are doing well in the ROCs or in the metagame or anything we find on the internet. I have discovered an issue with this. Amber doesn't quite have the mindset that I have with regards to this. Because she's going in judging, she's not watching the metagame as carefully as I do. Because she doesn't run a show called Metafix, she doesn't watch or run or look at what's happening in the metagame or what figures happily affect it. Nothing against her. Amber is a good player, but she needs to be in her comfort zone. And so do you. I want to point this out because I gave her a team that very recently won an ROC. It was Brother Voodoo. It was Phantom Girl, armed with a utility belt. Tony Stark from the Iron Man movie, 50.1. We have the Enchantress, who had her 50-point dial, and we all know she's probability control and telekinesis. Tony Stark is enhancement and outwit. Phantom Girl is shut down resources. The team also had Scotty's Warbot and a businesswoman to wrap up the points. This is the only way I can describe this is a min-max menu of awesome. This team is fantastic. It does everything that needs to get done in a single game, and it does it very effectively. No figure is without worth, with maybe the exception of the businesswoman, but even then, she can block line of fire. Now, the reason I bring up this team is because when I gave it to Amber, Amber's understanding the utility belt is not of the highest caliber. She doesn't know how to use it as well as most of us do. An example is she didn't understand the fantasticness that is the cowl that is the Pseudosaurus. The Pseudosaurus, what it gives your character is super strength and battle fury. Now, a lot of characters that you throw that on don't care about the loss of range on battle fury. What they care about with regards to the super strength and battle fury is the gain of super strength and the gain of the ability to ignore mind control and ignore shape change. Two are very prominent in the metagame right now. Specifically, Phantom Girl being out there in the metagame, she has shape change. Well, a Phantom Girl attacking a Phantom Girl while carrying a Pseudosaurus now doesn't have to worry about that shape change from the opposing Phantom Girl. It's only their super senses. And if you can get a way to outwit that somehow, like say, I don't know, the Tony Stark that's on this team, then you're looking at a pretty handsome option, right? So when we look at all of what's going on with that particular thing, Amber didn't understand. She wanted to use the Bat Cow. She wanted the stealth. Why do I want to use the stealth? The stealth is good. The Pseudosaurus is better because of her mobility with the addition of the telekinesis coming from Enchantress. She's got the ability to go across the board, shut down half the team's resource options, and then sit somewhere out there without worrying about a lot of retaliation. As well, she was able to do probably 4 damage with the addition of a heavy object. And if it's on the first action with the utility belt, she's got +1 to her stats. Add a heavy object to that, +1 to the stats. She's attacking with an 11 attack. Throw over the Brother Voodoo out in the mix. She's got the probability control. Do you see where all this kind of comes together? But if you don't know that this is how this comes together, and you're like, oh, well, I know what the Phantom Girl does and the Enchantress does. I don't know what this Tony Stark does. He's 50 points. It doesn't seem like he does much. But Brother Voodoo's pretty cool. Scotty's Warbot, it's a bystander token, whatever. If you don't have the understanding of the team going in, you're gonna look like a fool because somebody's gonna look at that and go, hey, that team wins tournaments. How did you lose with that? So you get an embarrassment factor to come into. And because of the positioning strategy, in addition to the knowledge base that you require to win with a team in Heroclix, you're going to run into a lot of dangerous things. I want to kind of encapsulate this episode in the idea that Battle Fury isn't bad anymore. It started off looking very terrible. You lose your range, you can't be carried anymore. It was kind of a thing that Wolverine got at the end of his dial after taking a beating, and now you can't save him very easily. Or most Wolverine, it was a Wolverine power. And then all of a sudden, Battle Fury became a thing that is actually heavily impacting a metagame that is full of Brother Voodoo. Because Brother Voodoo uses mind control very effectively, very prominently. If you're not able to mind control with the Brother Voodoo, 3/4 of his functionality is 100% gone. And that's all in one power, which can be given with this Pseudosaurus slammed in this 14-point resource. I always max out this thing, but it's very easy to dumb it down a bit, but that's neither here nor there. So one of the things that you have to go in with a team when you go into any tournament and you're playing a high-level competition. You got to know what every single figure on your team does, and this is part of team building. The guy that functionally made this team, he didn't just make a team that he threw together. If you can just see just in what each figure is capable of, how much thought process went into, well, Phantom Girl we know is strong. Enchantress is well-rounded with telekinesis, 8 range, probability control, and super senses. Tony Stark at only 50 points because you outwit enhancement on a team with 2 guys with range attack, 3 guys when you include Scotty's Warbot, who's got 18 defense and leadership. You could possibly let the business woman move. But because this team is big, that leadership, you can never ever forget that extra action you get from leadership. Holy crap, some people forget about that. I've had teams full of characters with leadership, and I always remember those roles because extra actions and the ability to remove action tokens is awesome. And because leadership stacks now, you've got that fundamental, just continuous awesome. So, and I say now, many, many moons ago, for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, leadership used to be a roll of 4, 5, or 6, and you'd get 1 extra action for your turn, and that was the only effect it had. And that could only trigger once. Because it was a 50-50 chance, 50% of the time it was a curve. So if you had it happen twice in a single turn, it would be a little overpowered. Now, the current one only occurs once every, like, 1 in 3 dice rolls it occurs, and that's like the odds of it. That's not necessarily how often it happens. But, you get that added bonus of removing that token from a character who's smaller. So every power is utilized in this team to maximum potential. But if you go in and say, this team won, they should do well, then you're not going to do well with it, because I stomped on Amber once she was piloting this team because she didn't fundamentally understand what was going on. And it's nothing against her, again. She knows how to play the game. I've given her other ROC teams and she stepped on me with, but those were a little easier to understand than this one was. For instance, she stomped me with the New Mutants team. We made a change to the New Mutants team that we're not going to talk about because that's ours, just in case things go lean towards that. And New Mutants is prominent in the metagame. We'll talk. But that said, I'm stumbling all over my words here, so bear with me. when you come in with a tournament, into this game, you got to know what you're piloting. You can't come into, you can't drive a car, or you can't expect to pilot an airplane if you drive a car, is what I'm saying. So, know your teams, know all the functionality of powers going into a tournament. I can't stress this enough. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at some powers and go, oh, it does that as well. I think I did an episode talking about knockback from Force Blast, didn't I? So, that said, think about your teams, practice your teams, know the powers. Knowledge is power, kids. Go in, because knowing is have to. Am I going to get sued by this if I try to use that phrase? Anyway, so go in with the tools you know, and you'll come out more successful than if you go in with tools you don't know. So if you don't understand what I just talked about with this team here, this team, I don't know how the camera angles work. If you can't understand this team, don't play with this team. You will not do well with this team. But if you do understand, especially after I just talked about this team, then you will do well with this team. So, I'm not going to ramble on much more longer. Know your team, know what it does, know how to use it.